I'm going to delete several of these buttons. I'll keep 4 of them, I guess, just so we can see how the rows are working. There we go. All right, definitely want to save now that I got that working, because I'm telling you, this stuff is easy to mess up, so definitely save if yours is working. If yours isn't working, go back and very carefully retrace the steps and see exactly where you went wrong. You can feel free to ask me for help. Now the next thing I'm looking at is these buttons here. You can see they use the same graphic with the rounded corners that we deleted from our panel earlier. But if I were to go look at our mockup, these things are just hard-edged squares. So we'll fix that the same way we fixed it before. I'm actually going to delete down to 1 button because essentially we're going to make one of them perfect and then we're going to make it a prefab, right? So we'll delete the, on the button, delete the source image UI sprite. So I just selected, I clicked in here, and then I'm going to hit backspace. And now it's just a perfectly hard cornered square. Actually there will not be a label here, so we can go ahead and delete the text label. So that's gone. Let's save again because I'm paranoid. So another big problem with this, if we look at our mockup, there's no panel. We have this ugly transparent panel here. You see this gray area? That does not exist in this one. So let's go ahead and kill that. So if we look at our scroll view, we need to figure out, basically we need to figure out where that is. So I think it might be this image. It is. So on your scroll view, I could remove this component, but it's kind of nice for visualizing how big this is. So I'm just going to turn it off for now. And if we ever want it back, we could check it, but this is not, we don't want it in our real game, so I'm going to turn it off. All right. So real quick, I just realized the problem we're going to have. If you go in and duplicate your button a bunch, just whatever, that's fine. You can click these when the game's running, so you can see they're clickable and they have nice little transitions. But there's an issue here that if we think about how this is really going to work, you select one of the buttons and it has like, it's kind of hard to see here. Maybe I can zoom in. But there is like a little rectangular outline around the one that is selected. It has a bit of a different color, and that's how we know what description text we're reading. So this thing is selected, this is its text. Only one of these should ever be able to be selected at a time, and it should remain in that selected state until it's not selected. So more or less, I think we're describing something that's not just a button, it's actually probably more like a toggle. It may not seem like it, but I will show you what I mean. So let me fix my zoom here. There we go. Let's go back to Unity. I'm going to stop the game. I'm going to delete all these buttons. I guess all of them but one for now. So let's go ahead and right click on our content area and go ahead and choose UI toggle. You can kind of see what I'm talking about here. Boy, this toggle came in really stupid. I think we can fix this by, if you ever notice that issue, if you uncheck the grid layout group and recheck it, it will sort of fix it. And boy, our texture looks awful. We'll fix that sooner or later, once we need to, I suppose. Anyway, So this is a toggle. And if you run the game, you will see what it does. It's super small. I could zoom in. Oh, well, that didn't work. Anyway, it sure does look awful, but basically there's a check mark when it's toggled on, and then check mark goes away when it's toggled off. And so that is like the foundation of this functionality we want, where this button can be like selected or not. So that's why I'm going to make it a toggle. And plus there's a good way with toggles to set it up so that only one can be on at a time. So problem is this toggle looks really wrong. So how are we going to fix it? So first of all, we don't want the label, which looks hideous. So I'm going to delete the label. I'm going to look at the thing that's called a background and expand it, and that's where this check mark lives. So we need to sort of replace the check mark with a different graphic that looks like our button is selected. So we'll deal with that in a minute. And we need to resize like the background image here so that it fills up this whole space. So one way I think we can do that, if you look at this background image and you look at its anchors and its transform settings here, right now it's anchored to the top left and it's set to just be 20 by 20. Well, what if I change it? I click right here and I hold Alt to also set position. I want it to fill this entire space. So I'll just do that. So again, you hold Alt and choose that. Now, we have the problem where we got the rounded edges. We know how to fix that. Again, I'm on the background of my toggle. I'm going to just delete the UI sprite. Alright, so now we're more or less back in business. I can make this check mark. I can probably make it bigger too. Let's see if I just do that for now. And check mark is not ultimately what we're going to want for this, but it can be fine for the time being. Okay. So if I run the game now, you will see my toggle. So it's off, it's on. So it's a little different than a button, but it's similar. Alright, so we got a toggle. I can go delete the button now, because the button was just not really what I wanted to use. So I can delete the button, and now that I got this toggle, remember it's just going to work the same way. Like as I duplicate it, there will be more and more and more, and they come in the right spot. So I'll delete them back down to 1. And let's work on setting this one up to look just right, matching our mock-up. So the mock-up, we can see some colors here. Maybe I will actually open this thing in Photoshop because I'm going to need to get all of these colors. So I'm going to, you can use the snipping tool or whatever you can to get a screenshot of this. I'm going to copy it to my clipboard. I'm going to go to Photoshop. I'm going to hit New. And I think by default it's going to match my clipboard. And I'll paste it. I didn't mean to really get the cursor in there, but whatever, no big deal. So I can see this is the normal color. And then this is like the selected color. So let's figure out the normal color first. I'll choose this to get this little eyedropper, select that color, and I can see this is the hexadecimal code for this color. I'm going to copy it. Let's go back to Unity. I'm going to select my toggle. I'm going to find its normal color. And I'm going to paste in the hexadecimal. So now it should sort of match that color. So that's cool. Looking good. So next, we should figure out what the selected color is. So that's like this color right here. Let's go back to my screenshot. I'm just going to use the color picker to choose that color and copy the hexadecimal value. Go back to Unity. And again, I have my toggle selected. And we're going to see where it says highlighted color. And I'm going to paste in that new value. And so let's see what that looks like. So I will run the game. And when I mouse over it, I should see that color. Interestingly, yeah, that's cool. That's what I want. So it's unselected. It's selected. It's probably going to be useful at this point for me to see how to deal with multiple of these, so I can kind of see how the selected functionality is working. So why don't we at this point make a prefab out of our toggle? I'm going to give it a better name before I make it a prefab. So let's call this the, oops, what happened there? I'm going to call this the inventory item toggle. And I'm going to find my prefabs folder. I'm going to drag this into it. And so now, this way, as I change them, it'll be easy to change them all at once. So I'm going to duplicate it so I at least have 2. I'll get 4 just for fun. I need to make it so that you can only select one of these at a time, right? We don't want you to be able to have multiple selected, right? So the way to do that is with something called a toggle group. And I think it makes sense. I think I'll just put it on this content area here. And to help me understand that my toggle group is here, I'm going to call this the content toggle group. And I'm going to add a toggle group component to it. And so the trick to this is to select all your toggles and make sure they all know that they belong to the same group. Oops, the group is on this. So I have to put the group there. So every toggle should belong to the same toggle group. You should take note that, see how this is in bold? That means this is different than my prefab. So if I click on this overrides here, you'll see that the group is what's different. And I could try to apply this, but it's actually not going to let me. I don't think. Let's see. Yeah, it didn't give me a very robust message about that, but I can promise you it didn't work. So if I look at the prefab here, you can see it doesn't understand that it's in a group. The reason is that this prefab, it doesn't know about, this is all it knows about, you can see here. It doesn't know about the toggle group, because the toggle group exists on a game object that's not part of the prefab. And the prefab can only know about things that are within it, contained within the actual prefab itself. So that's why I can't just make this part of the prefab. I'm going to have to, since we're adding these things dynamically as the player picks up objects, I'm going to have to make sure in code I assign their group. We don't got to worry about that for now. We can just cheat by manually dragging in the content group, the toggle group to this group property. But once we start doing it for real, we'll have to set it up right. So it's kind of going haywire because the default is that they're all checked. So we need to do a couple of things. First of all, I guess I'll just select them all again. And I'm going to change is on to not be checked. Is on is what tells it whether or not it's going to start checked or not. So if I run it now, none of them will be checked, I believe. Yeah. And now if I click a new one, it turns off the old one. So we're getting somewhere, slow and steady. So if you click one of these, you'll notice So I have two colors that are part of my color scheme from my mockup. This selected color that's highlighted, this unselected color. But when I actually click, there's some other color here. I don't know what that color is. It's not part of my color scheme. It's not in this mockup at all. And this is actually, if you select one of these toggles, it's going to be this pressed color. So I think we should choose a new color for this. It's part of our mockup. So I'm going to go ahead and use this color. The mockup isn't giving me a color for this, but basically, since I'm going to use this color, basically this little outline is going to become the replacement for the check mark. So this color will be in the menu. I want to use as many of the same colors as possible. You don't want to just have like tons of colors. You want to have like a set color palette that you reuse over and over. Kind of like fonts. You don't want to use like 20 fonts. You want to pick a couple and just use them consistently. So anyway, I'm going to figure out what this color is, copy it, and I'm going to use this for the pressed. So here's my toggle, and here's this pressed color, and I'm going to paste that in. It's this kind of yellowish color. So now if I run the game, I got this kind of, I didn't apply it. So I need to make sure I actually apply this. See how it's in bold? That means it has not been applied to the prefab. So click overrides, and I can see, like, if I select it, you can see that pressed color is a thing that's different. I want to apply that to all of the other prefabs. So now they all have the pressed color. And so if I test it out, there's that yellowy color when I actually press down. Cool. So now I think the next step is going to be, how do we replace this check mark with this like outline? So I think we're going to have to make a new graphic to do this. You know, if we look at how the check mark is set up, I'll go ahead and stop the game before I forget it's running. So expand any of your toggles, and then you'll see there's this background, which we know about. It's just the image that's giving us this color. If I expand that, there's the check mark. And this is what's basically getting turned on and off based on whether or not you've clicked the thing. So the check mark needs to be replaced. Instead of being this check mark image, we want to replace it with something that looks like this little box outline. So I think the way to deal with that is just to make a new graphic. So in here in Photoshop, I'm going to go to File, New, and I need to decide how big this thing should be. Now I don't even know how big. If I look at our game, I'm not even sure how many pixels this actually is. So rather than worry about it, I'm going to be clever and set up a I'm going to use a relatively small image, source image, and set it up so that it can be scaled. And it's cool if you make it small and make it scalable, you know, you're taking up less, your project is going to have smaller disk size. So the important thing here is that we make our new texture. Whenever you're making textures for a game, you want to make the textures in powers of 2. So I could get pretty crazy making this small. I could make it maybe 16 by 16, but that's just going to be hard for me to deal with. So I think 32 by 32 is plenty small. And I want to make sure it's transparent background, because basically most of the whole image is going to be transparent, and it's only going to have colored in around its edges, and we're going to draw it on top of that background, just like this check mark was drawing on top. So anyway, 32 by 32, transparent background. We'll create this thing. You can see it's pretty tiny. I'm going to zoom in to make this easier to deal with. So I'm going to hit Control A in Photoshop, which is select all. You can see I've selected everything here. I think you could maybe go to like, oh yeah, select all. There's how you do it if you don't like hotkeys. And I'm going to create a stroke around the edge of my artwork here. So let's see, I am not a Photoshop guy, but I am convinced we can find this. Edit, stroke, here we go. So I'm going to do a stroke, and I'm going to make it something like, 8 pixels might actually be pretty good. I could make it the specific color, but I'm going to be clever and make it white. And if we make it totally white, we can actually color it in code. And that way, if we ever need to change whatever color this outline is, we don't need to make a new art asset for it. We can use the same art asset and color it however we want. So I'm going to make it white. And I need to make sure that I've chose inside here, because if like I want my 8 pixels to be drawn like from my selection inward. If I were to go like outward, I'm out of bounds. It's not drawing anything, right? Like you can see it did nothing, more or less. So let's fix that. Stroke, I'm going to make it 8 pixels inside. And I'll hit OK. And there we go. And so this might look crazy to you. Like that is not going to look like this. Or where's my other one in here? It's maybe easier to see. Yeah, see, that's like your David. That's a skinny outline, and you drew this giant one. Well, I'll show you how we can deal with it. I picked 8 because I don't know. I just think 8 is a reasonable width for the thing. Remember, this square is only 32 by 32, and we're going to end up scaling it quite a bit. So the trick is going to be, how do we scale the square without scaling the outline? And I'll show you how to do that. So at this point, we're just going to export this as a PNG. We need it to be a PNG because that's how you get transparency. I don't know, just stick it wherever you can remember. And we need to name this thing, so I'm going to call it box outline and save it. And now we need to put it in our project. So it will be a sprite again. So find your sprites folder and let's drag it in. Hold on a minute. Okay, so here's the box outline PNG. We will drag it into our sprites folder. And there it is. Now remember, we need to say this is a 2D and UI sprite, and then choose apply. And now we're going to do a thing called 9-slice. 9-slice is going to be like, let me just demonstrate. If I drag this into the scene right now, I don't even know what it's teeny tiny, right? And let's see what happens as I scale it. Like, let's try to make it 15 by 15. I guess it's fine if I make it a perfect square-ish, but you can see, like, if I made it like wider, you see how it's messing up? It's like this part of the border is super wide and then this part is skinny. 9-slice is going to tell Unity how to scale this so that the border doesn't get stretched out. Only the part that we will never know if it's stretched out gets stretched out. So for instance, I could scale this part as long as I want and it will never get messed up. It's only this part that's going to get messed up. I can show you, like, where's the rectangle tool here. I guess it's just too tiny to work, so I'll just keep using the scale. Oh, there it is. See? So this middle part is fine. The edge here is awful. I could do the same thing if I went tall. The middle part over here will be okay, but then now this part's getting really stretched out awful. So that's how, this is what 9-slicing will fix. So I got this in the notes if you want to read all about how 9-slicing works in Unity, but I'm going to quickly walk through it here. So we need to find our box outline, and we need to change the mesh type to full rect. That's step one. That's the essential step in setting up this 9-slice technique. Now, step two is open the Sprite Editor. And it's going to say, yeah, you have to apply that change you just made where I made it full rect. So I hit apply. Here is my Sprite Editor. And I had to help Unity understand what part is allowed to be stretched and what part isn't. So you see these tiny little green handles. Mouse over them and drag. And you want to drag it so that it lines up with the edge of your artwork there. I'll do the same thing here. So the edge of my border. And then I need to do it here from the top. And this is kind of like blocking my view. Do it right here as well from the bottom. Now you can maybe understand why it's called a 9-slice. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Can't see it because this dumb thing. 9. So those are the 9 slices. This part will never be stretched out. This part will never be stretched out. This part won't be stretched, and this part won't be stretched either. But these middle parts we can stretch all day, and it will look right. So just hit apply, and I'll show you what I mean. So this is really useful if you want to create like intricate UI windows that can be scaled. I don't know. For example, that one that we keep deleting, the UI one, that has the rounded corners. Like your rounded corners would get messed up if you scaled, so you have to set up 9 slicing so that it will work in a variety of sizes and shapes. Anyway, now that we got that all set up, I can do things like scale this thing really big and unevenly, I think. Let's just keep trying it. Yeah. It's not working. I must have done something wrong. Let's figure out what. Alright, so I've discovered a couple things. So first of all, in order to get the 9-slice thing to work right, we need to make sure we're doing it on a UI, or at least that's one way to make it work that we're going to do anyway. So what I'm going to do just to demonstrate it is on my canvas here, I'm going to add an image. So UI image. And I'm going to change, so here's my new image. I'm going to change the sprite that it's using to this box outline I made. And you're going to notice, like if I zoom out, it's going to actually work. So it's mainly working, but there's a problem. You see this like weird transparent part? This is a result of having the incorrect import settings here. So when we're dealing with, pixel art, more or less, or art that we want to be like accurately reflected down to the pixel, we need to make sure we don't use this filtering. So filtering, it's good for 3D stuff where you're trying to like blur out jagged edges and pixels, right? Like when you walk up to a wall in a first-person shooter, you don't want to see all the pixelated art. So that's why we do this filtering. But for UI stuff and pixel art, like in a 2D game, you want to make sure you use this point no filter. And you can see it actually fixed it already. But so you choose point no filter, then you have to choose apply. And now I can scale this sucker, and it gives me the same size outline no matter what, which is pretty cool. Alright, so we need to use this instead of that check mark. So let's delete that. Let's go find the check mark. We only need to do it in one of them here because it's a prefab and we can apply the change to all of them. So let's go find the check mark. And I'm going to change its source image. And I'm going to select my box outline I made. And it's sort of working. I don't know what's going on. Let's see if we can figure it out. So I think it's working. It's just we can't see it because the check mark isn't drawing. Well, we could change it. Well, you could either run the game and then just click it like so. And now you can see that it's there, right? Or you could go to your inventory item toggle and choose is on. And I think like next time we run the game and stop it, it will be there. Yeah, so that's what it looks like. So I'm going to uncheck is on. Well, I guess I'll leave it for now because one more thing we need to do while it's visible is change the color, right? So let's just remember what that color is. I'm going to take another look at Photoshop and look at my this one. And we need to grab this color right here. And like I said, since we made that white, we can apply any color we want to it in Unity. So go back to Unity. Let's go find this box outline thing again, which is called check mark, because I was lazy and didn't change it. And we need to change its color to be the color we want. There we go. And there's some strange, I don't know what's going on with that. I'll think about that and we'll see what happens. But anyway, if we want to, well, all right, let's turn off the is on toggle because we don't want them all to be toggled on. That's not right. But we do want them all to have this color on the check mark, this color that is. So go back to the toggle and go to overrides, apply all. And that should set it up so that they all have that coloring. I've got this goofy zooming thing going on. Alright, anyway, so now you can see it's working, I think. So that's cool.